you know one thing about God. He also likes when people are kind, well-behaved, speak nicely, right?
But there is another that when people behave certain like that kind thing, they have also their self-interest behind it. So how do you know
Well, but
your kindness again?
you know when someone is genuinely kind to you, and when someone is kind to you to advance their self-interest. You can tell, can't you? You have that natural instinct to tell if someone's being genuine or being false. God does too. Better than us. So therefore, if someone is being genuinely nice to you, you appreciate it.
Other than that, what else will come?
Well, if someone is always giving you something without any return desire, just genuinely giving you appreciate it. So he knows two things about God. And when someone is wishing you well, genuinely wishing you well, there's no envy or someone always tells the truth, right? And you trust them because they're always telling the truth. Now you know three things about that. You just go down the list, different things that you have seen in your own life that touch your heart because people are being genuine with you. No lying, no cheating, speaking sincerely, nicely, being kind, patient, all these qualities.
Actually, all those things I have only seen in one is a pure devotees like you, Prabhuji. I haven't
You
there are
see
many
that?
like Mataji and Prabhuji. They are serving every
Okay,
right. It's
there
such
you
a
are.
big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So you appreciate that. So people are serving, offering their service with no strings attached to it, just genuine. So that's another thing.
It's like how you love your kids, right, Mataji? You love your kids, right? So this is part of you. Do you expect anything in return from your kids? No, right?
No, at least there is no that kind of motive behind.
Yes.
Care
It's a
about
pure
it.
love, right? It's always giving to your kids. So, like you extend that kind of unconditional love for two kids. God extends it for everybody. It's all unconditional. Nothing in return He is expecting out of us.
Now the other thing is God is the original father of everyone. So father and mother.
It's,
Right? So
it's all unconditional.
you're a mother, and you have to tolerate so many things, but you love your children, even if they do bad things. You still don't give up your love for them. So now you understand something else about God, and you only wish good things for your children. You wish that they become good persons and tell the truth and live honestly, and so forth. So now you know God is like that also. That's what He wants for us.
It's finite and infinite. That's it. Qualities in us are finite and what is infinite. As Prabhu said, it's all like you wish your kids to do well. Since you give them freedom, you give them money, you give them toys, you give them life, you give them clothes, you feed them good food. It's all that, though it is unconditional, at some point of time you want to be on the righteous path. You're not deviating out of dharma. But you won't restrict or you won't confine them all the time, right? You give them enough freedom.
But then I expect them to be well behaved,
Yes.
and then listen to what is right, what is wrong. You should at least use your mind to decide. If you can't, then at least come to me and then figure it
And you
out.
understand a lot about God. You know more about God than I do, just by analyzing yourself. You see, He's
So,
our Father. So everything you just said, He wants for us. So we, as His children, This is his expectation for us, so we should think about that.
What you think about your kid, the same God also thinks about us. Like He never restricted us to do good or bad. It's all, or what is that, buddhi?
He wants us naturally to do
Naturally.
the good thing. Okay, so here, continue with this concept. This is called the swabhavika, or swabhava, the natural tendency of a human being. That this is in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Oh, okay.
I will come back to Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Okay, so not a single entity can remain unengaged, even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendency, according to the three modes of material nature, because this natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way. And Prabhupada explains, the swabhavika, or one's natural tendency, is the most important factor in action. One's natural tendency is to serve, because a living entity is an eternal servant of God. The living entity wants to serve, but because of his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord, he serves under the modes of material nature and manufactures various modes of service, such as socialism, humanitarianism, altruism, all the isms. However, one should be enlightened in the tenets or the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that one give up all natural tendencies for material service under different names and take to the service of the Lord. One's original natural tendency is to act in Krishna consciousness, because one's real nature is spiritual. The duty of a human being is to understand that since he is essentially spirit, he must abide by the spiritual tendency and not be carried away by material tendencies. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung, Miche Mayaravase, Yacha Bese, Hacha Habu Dubudai, Hacha Habu Dububai. My dear brothers, you are being carried away by the waves of material energy and are suffering in many miserable conditions. Sometimes you are drowning in the waves of material nature, and sometimes you are tossed like a swimmer struggling in the ocean. As confirmed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this tendency to be battered by the waves of Maya can be changed to one's original natural tendency, which is spiritual, when the living entity comes to understand that he is eternally Krishna Dasa, a servant of God, Krishna. Jiva Krishna Dasa e Vishwasa Karlita Aradukha Nai. If, instead of serving Maya under the different names, one turns his service attitude toward the Supreme Lord, he is then safe, and there is no more difficulty. If one returns to his original natural tendency in the human form of life by understanding the perfect knowledge given by Krishna himself in the Vedic literature, one's life is successful. So, this is swabhavika, or swabhava, the natural tendency of living entity. Now, this is explained in Bhagavad Gita also. In G. Okay, let's look at sixth chapter, verse, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. Jeez. Third chapter,
Which one are you looking for, Prabhu?
third chapter, verse 35. Okay, this says, "It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially, prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychophysical condition, under the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. You notice it says he can do anything but under the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master.
Even when he has transcended the modes of nature, still he needs a spiritual master.
Yes. Yeah. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana, or a Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions in the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamrita was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parasurama was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. So, the modes of material nature affect us in such a way that we do not purely understand ourselves or Krishna. For example, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, during his time, the Vaishnavas became somewhat degraded, or very degraded, in Bengal. And his father started to try and correct them, but he wanted his son to actually, complete that difficult task. So, the idea was that a Vaishnava is superior to all the different orders of society, Brahmana and Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. And even the ashramas, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. So Vaishnavas were not taking sannyas. They considered that those are reformatory ashrams, but being a Vaishnava, you're transcendental to them. So along comes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he takes sannyas. This was like a shock to the Vaishnava community. The followers of the Shaivites, they were taking sannyas all along. But at one point the Vaishnavas stopped doing it because they said Vaishnava is transcendental to all the social orders and the spiritual orders. However, what happened, by thinking like that, they degraded to abominable activity, basically trying to imitate Krishna, dancing, organizing Rasa Lila dances and things like that, all kinds of nonsense things. So, to stop that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took sannyas. And the Vaishnavas, basically the false Vaishnavas, they became very upset. Why is he doing this? And he took sannyas by looking at a picture of his guru. So, why did he do that? Now, later on, in a debate with the caste Goswamis, he proved to them that Vaishnavas are transcendental to the different orders of life, to the caste system and so forth. So here we have seemingly two contradictory things. On one hand, he's taking sannyas, which is part of the, what you would call the Varnashram system. And then, on the other hand, he's arguing that Vaishnavas are transcendental to it. So why did he do that? As your guru must discuss this in his book about Bhaktisiddhanta. Do you remember reading it?
I don't remember.
Oh, you should look it up. I'm going to explain it now, but you look it up, make sure I'm right. He did it to stop the phony Vaishnavas from cheating, claiming that they're transcendental, but then engaging in abominable activity. And, like today, in ISKCON, there are Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. There's also Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. Right? Prabhupada especially established the ashrama system in ISKCON, but then people naturally have tendencies of working in certain ways. So, now the question is, why did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur do that? Well, he did that to have a clear definition of proper behavior for people gradually becoming Vaishnavas, pure Vaishnavas. In other words, surrendering to Krishna means you're already Vaishnava, but not necessarily that you're pure Vaishnava. So to protect people from themselves and to protect society from people claiming to be Vaishnavas, he established the Varnashram designations like his guru did, because each section of the Varnashram system has definite identifying qualities and characteristics. So, for example, if you have something like a phenomenon like a brahmacharya, right, or I'm sorry, you have a grihastachari. He's a brahmachari, but he's acting like a grihastha, meaning if he was a brahmachari, a pure brahmachari, then he would not have any personal assets. He would offer everything to the guru. He would listen strictly to all the instructions of the guru and live a very simple life, preaching, distributing books, and so forth. But if he claims to be a brahmachari, but yet he has a bank account, he works for himself, and, like, for example, he learned how to do book distribution, so now he lives outside of the temple but earns his living by doing book distribution and claims to be a brahmachari but doesn't follow any authority. So he's violating the principles of brahmachari life. Right? So there's a strict definition of what is a brahmachari, there's a strict definition of what is a grihastha and how they should act, there's a strict definition of what is vanaprastha and sannyas. So that's to protect us because we're on the path of purification. And at any time it's possible to deviate, right? Because we're not absolute pure devotees. So these orders of life with their strict definitions of behavior are important to safeguard ourselves from ourselves and to safeguard society from us. Like, for example, I once met a man, he said he was born in Vrindavan, and that was true. And he was a Brahmin, but he had a glass of wine in his hand. And I asked him, what do you do for a living? He said, I work at Microsoft. So how can he be a Brahmin? Right? Brahmin, first of all, real Brahmins don't work for anybody. They're independent. Right? How do they earn their living? They earn their living by performing ceremonies or doing deity worship or teaching or begging. Nowhere does it say they work for Microsoft. Right? You see, so you cannot really be and nowhere does it say they drink champagne or wine, right, or beer or anything like that. So you see, but he said, no, I'm a Brahmin, and to prove it, he showed me his Brahmin thread. But anybody can buy Brahmin thread, 15, 20, 50 paisa, you buy a Brahmin thread. Just because he has a Brahmin thread on doesn't mean, that's not proof that he's Brahmin, right? He has a Brahmin thread on and has a glass of wine in his hand. So what kind of Brahmin is he? So therefore the Varnashram system gives definitions of the behavior of people in those different orders. So therefore there are duties that we should perform when we're still influenced by the modes of material nature, and there are duties when we're free from the influence of the modes of material nature. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished, following the rules of violence, than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of non-violence. So here we have, now if we just read that, now if we analyze Gandhi was talking about being non-violent. So, the problem is, if Gandhi is engaged in politics and he's preaching non-violence, then the result is the massacre of the Hindus in Pakistan. That's the direct result of that type of hodgepodge of nonsense. And how can he be a politician and be non-violent? The politics only succeed in many cases by violence, not by non-violence. So, I mean, he can lead a non-violent movement, but to be a politician who makes decisions about society, that is a perfect formula for failure. That same thing happened to Martin Luther King. He was also assassinated, like Gandhi. Martin Luther King went to India to study Gandhi's nonviolent movement. He comes back to the United States and starts a nonviolent movement of American blacks to get the right to vote and to stop what they call Jim Crow laws. There are laws that discriminate against black people, especially in the South, and more subtly in the North. So he succeeded in doing that. And then he wanted to extend his movement by uniting poor white people with the black people against the Vietnam War. Exactly at that point he was assassinated. Why? Because then he got mixed into politics, right? He wanted to sort of morph into the anti-war movement, which is a very highly sensitive political issue during the 1960s and 70s. At that point, he was assassinated. And Gandhi, he was assassinated not during the entire British colonial rule of India, like from 1920 to late 1940s. He was assassinated after India's independence, when he got, when he was trying to non-violently settle the issue of Pakistan, of the Muslims separating from the Hindus. And it caused a massacre and population transfer of a huge number of people and a lot of suffering. So he was assassinated by his own people for doing that. So that's basically what he's saying here. A Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya it is better to be vanquished, that means defeated, following the rules of violence, than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. So this gradual process, let's say you join Krishna consciousness when you're like maybe 25 years old. Okay. So for 25 years one lived a normal sinful life. That's what normal life is now in America. And now you stop it, and then after 1 year you get initiated. Does that mean you're a pure devotee? Theoretically, yes. Practically, not yet completely pure, but on the path to become pure. Therefore, it's a gradual process. It's not an abrupt process. All of a sudden, by some magic, after initiation, someone becomes an absolutely pure devotee. They'll never fall down. It's not possible. So everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. So in other words, even after being free from the influence of the modes of material nature, one should still follow the instructions of a spiritual master. Even though they're capable of doing anything now, they could be born a Brahmana and they could take the position of a Kshatriya, or they could be a Kshatriya and take the position of a Brahmana. But they should only do this still under the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master. So we see that being free from the influence of modes of material nature does not mean that you're necessarily a pure devotee. Even then, because a fall down is possible at any time. Therefore, one needs to be always under the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master. Yes.
So we are supposed to follow Varnashram Dharma. So if we are supposed to follow
Daiva Varnashram.
Daiva Varnashram. Okay. So which still includes Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, Shudras. So where will we fall? In which category will we fall? Because we are not Brahmana, we are running. We are not even Kshatriyas because we are not protecting or fighting. So where do we fall in that?
Well, hopefully you don't fall. We come under the category of servant. Dasi. Right? So what is a servant? Which one of those? Okay. So as long as you're a servant of the bona fide Guru and Krishna, then you are a Vaishnava. Right? So as a Vaishnava, you can be a servant. In fact, Chinadapi Sunichena Tarurapi Sestana Manina Manadina Kirtaniya Sada. You can be more tolerant than a tree, more humble than the straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree, and ready to offer all respect to others, even those who don't respect you. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So, what designation was Haridas Thakur? He's born in a Muslim family.
Navacharya.
Huh?
Navacharya.
No, but in the ashram, I think.
What was it?
Yeah, not even in the
Not even part of it, right? Because he's born in a Yavana family, right? But he's Vaishnava. And as a Vaishnava, he's naturally a servant. You see. But if you're serving Krishna, are you a Sudra? You see, you're not exactly, you're an exalted servant, because you're serving the most exalted. So, therefore, Prabhupada gave everybody a name Das or Dasi. Right? What your name is?
Dasi.
Huh?
Divya Dasi.
Yes, Dasi. My name is Harivilas Das. What does that mean?
servant of
Servant of
Krishna.
Radha.
Yeah, we're servant of Krishna, Guru and Krishna. So that's our designation. And what's our family? Achyuta Gotra, part of Krishna's family. If you say, no, I'm from Punjab, Haryana. No. Now you entered into Krishna's family. So you have a very noble lineage.
Once you're initiated, then your Gotra changes, Prabhu?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
because Achyuta Gotra is your eternal Gotra.
Oh, okay.
The other Gotra is a temporary Gotra. You know.
Oh,
Which Gotra were you in your previous life? Huh? We might not have even been a human being in a previous life, right?
yes.
But Achyuta Gotra is your eternal Gotra.
Oh, okay.
I think Prabhupada chose it nicely. Achyuta means Krishna was infallible.
Infallible.
He won't allow you to fall down again. Hopefully.
Well, if you follow, yeah.
Prabhuji, what is Yavana family? You said
Fifth, sixth,
Yavana is
seventh.
people who are against the Vedas.
Okay.
They're enemies of the Vedas.
You say they don't come in the Varnashram, they're below. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th.
You have Malechas, who people who were following the Vedas but gave them up.
Okay.
And you have Yavanas who are against.
Atheists.
They're trying to destroy it.
So there's-
Haridas Thakur was born in a Yavana family, yet he's Namacharya. And his name is Haridas Thakur, or Haridas, right? He's a servant. Yeah, Hari.
the Greeks were also called
They're Malechas.
Yavanas.
Turks are Yavanas. Greeks are Malechas.
Okay.
Where are the Greeks and Malechas?
Why are they Malechas?
Yeah.
Because they originally followed the Vedic tradition and then they gave it up. And the Yavanas were always against enemies. And they're meat eaters. So are the Malechas. They started to eat meat after they gave up. Okay. So, Haridas Thakur is born in a Yavana family, but yet Lord Chaitanya makes him Nama Acharya. So you see, no one is prohibited from Krishna consciousness. Nobody. Okay, so this was a discussion. Now let's look at the second chapter, 31st verse. Last paragraph where it says, there are two kinds of swadharmas. or swabhava also. Specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for the brahmanas and kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, a swadharma is called varnashram dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of varnashram dharma, or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. So always in accordance with the orders of higher authorities, meaning gurus. Okay. So that was, we were talking a lot about the swabhavika or swadharma.
This also makes it very clear, this paragraph.
Huh?
Makes it more clear.
Yeah. Yes. So we all have been born in the material world, and we have a particular body due to our previous karma, and we have a particular tendency for work. We have particular tendencies in general. These are called swakarma, this tendency for work. Somebody likes to be an artist, somebody likes to be a carpenter, somebody likes to be a stockbroker, somebody likes to, I don't know, whatever. Now, if we follow our tendency to work, but according to the Vedic rules, that is called the lower swadharma. And if we advance in that path and eventually become free from the influence of the modes of material nature by gradually being engaged full-time in devotional service, at that point we come to the higher swakarma, the ability to function without the influence of the modes of material nature. And because of that, we increase our devotional service to all day long, all night long. We're just always thinking about Krishna, serving Krishna. And then you become on the fast path to perfection. And that's called mamchayovi bicharina. One is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, does not fall down under any circumstance. Then they become completely transcendental to the modes of material nature, enter into the spiritual world. That doesn't mean you're no longer here. That means your consciousness is in the spiritual world all the time. You're not affected by anything in the material world. And your service is not affected or stopped in any way. Okay, so therefore we were on verse 25.
So Prabhuji, Krishna tells all these things to Arjuna. So in this particular verse, so Krishna tells Arjuna that you should behave in the
You're a
bodily
Kshatriya.
platform.
You're a Kshatriya.
You are a Kshatriya, but that is like a bodily conception, right? So he is pointing that you should be doing your duties because you are in the bodily platform, your consciousness is in that platform.
Well, he's acting like he's in the bodily platform because he's refusing to fight, refusing to do his duty because of family affection. Like today, I met a person. I was looking for properties in Sammamish, and I found this one property. It's very close to here. It's $300,000, 5 acres. So that caught my interest. So I tried and find out who's the agent, and it turns out that it's a Zillow agent who actually owns the property himself, and therefore he's the property owner selling the property. No, there's no, because he's a Zillow agent, he can represent himself. Right? So I called the man up, and right from the beginning, he seemed to be a different type of person, you know. And then very soon we started talking about spiritual things, and then very soon I told him that I'm associated with the temple in Sammamish. He said, "Oh, you mean that pink temple?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What's it take to get into into that temple? You know, my wife and I always wanted to come to that temple, but we don't know how to come." I said, "Well, you just walk through the front door, sir." No, I mean, are we allowed? I mean, we're like, you know, white people. Are we allowed to come in your temple? I said, "Yeah, you're allowed." See, a lot of people don't think they can come to the temple. They think it's only for Indians. So then, instead of talking about the property, we talked to each other for several hours about spiritual things, you know. And I invited him to come to the temple tonight. And so he said, "Yeah, I have to ask my wife." He said, "But if she says yes, we'll definitely come." So later on, he sends me a text message saying, "Well, I'm so eager to come to your temple. My wife doesn't want to come, so I can't come tonight." So that's called family affection. Like, this man's very excited about coming to the temple, right? But because his wife said no, he's not coming. So in the same way, Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and his duty is to fight. But because of family affection, he said no to Krishna. He said, "No, I'm not going to fight." So family affection is something that can affect people very seriously. It can be one of the greatest obstacles to advancing in spiritual life. Now, someone will say, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, you see, family affection, are you crazy or what? Everybody loves their family, right? Well, what's wrong with loving your family? Now, we don't say you shouldn't love your family. But what is it that you love in your family? Is it the bodies of your family members, or is it the soul of your family members? There's a difference. Just like if, let's say, one of your family members is drowning, and they're saying, "Help, help!" So you swim out, you say, "I'll help you," and you grab the family member, and you swim all the way back to shore. But when you get back to shore, you see only the shirt. You forgot to drag the person back. You just brought the shirt back. Now, is that helping your family member? So in the same way, if you what you mean by your family member is the body of your family member, then that's called false compassion. But if you have compassion for the soul of your family member, that's real compassion. So in the case of Arjuna, he had compassion for the bodies of his family members. And because of that, he refused to fight. But after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna agreed to fight. Even though he knew some people were going to die, family members included. There were family members on both sides of the battlefield. But above all those considerations is serving Krishna. So another example would be Mirabai. Mirabai was serving Giridhari, Krishna, the lifter of Govardhan Hill. And her husband took her to court and accused her of being unfaithful to him. You know the story? Right. And he said that my wife is unfaithful to me. She's more married to this Giridhari than she is to me. So, but she never gave up her faithfulness to Giridhari, to Krishna. And then she became a very, so-called very great devotee. Wrote beautiful bhajans glorifying Krishna. So now the question is, how do we relate to our family? Well, it depends. If you really love your family, then you should relate to them in a spiritual way. So a spiritual way means being kind, being gentle, being self-controlled, being compassionate, being interested in Krishna, following the principles of Krishna consciousness, and so forth. Now, as long as a person does not become fanatical, then there will probably not be any problem with the family. It's only when we become fanatical that there's a problem. So, how to not become fanatical, that is, to be extremely patient and not expect that because you are trying to be Krishna conscious, that means you have to impose that on everybody else. If you're Krishna conscious, then, genuinely Krishna conscious, then you'll be able to gradually help others become Krishna conscious. But if you're Krishna conscious in an artificial way, you'll just get other people angry and disgusted with Krishna consciousness. So, this self-control, this patience, this gentleness, this kindness, this, let's say, genuineness, is something that has to be cultivated. But it can only be cultivated if you have faith in Krishna and you have control of your mind and senses. Then you will not be offensive to anyone. And then people will say, well, look, I might not agree with what our family member believes, but I have to admit that our family member has become a better person by following this path of Krishna consciousness. That's what counts. When they see that you're a better person, more kind, more gentle, more peaceful, more patient, more understanding, right, and more genuine. Then they say, look, I might not agree, but I can't deny the fact that our family member has become a better person by following this Krishna consciousness. Right? And Prabhupada explains that, if someone is genuinely Krishna conscious, all people, whether they're good people or bad people, will recognize the genuineness. And there's that story about one time there was a factory owned by a Hindu gentleman, and almost all his workers were Hindus. But then he sold the factory to a Muslim gentleman. And then the first day the Muslim gentleman took over, he told all the Hindus, I don't want you putting this stuff on your forehead anymore. Anyone puts tilak on their forehead, they'll get fired. So the next day, all the Hindus took the tilak off except for one. And the Muslim man said, he called a meeting, he said, I told you no tilak. And he looked around and he saw the man with tilak. He said, you, come over here. So how come you didn't take the tilak off? He said, well, because I don't have to follow your order. This is my religion. My God told me to put tilak on. I'm going to put tilak on. You want to fire me? You fire me. He said, I want everyone to hear this now. This man has the right to put tilak on because he's a genuine follower. The rest of you are all phonies. So he respected him because he was not afraid. He said, you want to fire me? You fire me. I'm not going to take the tilak off. This is my religion. This is my God. I believe my God. He wants me to put tilak on. So you see, being a genuine person is something that people respect. Being, wishy-washy, nobody respects that. The more you compromise your religion, the more people lose their respect for you. Even the Muslim man, he could respect the Hindus. I'm not taking this tilak off. This is my religion. My God has ordered me to put it on. I'm not going to take it off. Okay. So, we are verse number 25. Avyakto yam achintyo yam. avikaryoyam uchyate
Adhikaroyam uchyate
tasmat evam viditvainam
tasmadeva viditvanam
nana sochitamarhasi
nanasochitam
avyakta
avyakta
invisible
invisible
I am
ayam
this soul
soul
achintya
chintya
inconceivable
inconceivable
I am this soul
this soul
avikarya
avikarya
unchangeable
unchangeable
I am
ayam
this soul
this soul
uchyate is said tasmat therefore evam
evam
like this viditva knowing it well
knowing it well
enam
enam
this soul
this soul
na do not anasochitam to lament arhasi you deserve.
you deserve.
How many times does he say this soul in this verse?
3 times.
Four times. So, what's the main subject of this verse? The soul. Right? So he describes the soul as invisible, inconceivable, immutable. Let's see. Invisible, inconceivable, unchangeable, which means immutable, right? So, now there's an interesting point. Can you say that the body is invisible? No. Is it inconceivable? Is it unchangeable? So here, major differences explained here between the body and the soul. Most people never understand the difference between the body and the soul. They think I am the body. So, therefore, they never really begin their spiritual life. Unless you can understand the difference between the body and the soul, you don't really begin your spiritual life. You haven't even taken the first step. So, you can do some homework. Ask your friends, do you believe that your soul is different than your body? What do you think they'll say?
No. Yeah.
Yom, yeah. Is it yes or no? You
Yeah.
Yes.
I said yeah.
said yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think they would say
No.
yes or no?
Well, it depends who it is.
But Prabhu, even though I know, we say I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, it is not internalized in me. I really don't understand it that well. Probably I can tell it theoretically to people that, you have a soul and this is not your body. But I'm not able to internalize it and understand it like the way it is supposed to be understood. I don't know why.
Well, that's normal, because, like I said, it's the first major step in spiritual life, to understand the difference. But you can understand that you have observed the different changes of your body, is it not? Like, for example, in most American houses, they have this ruler, like, 36 or 48 inches long. And as their kid is growing up, they put little, lines on it, and they put, 1-year-old,
Yeah.
1.5 years old, 2 years old. So, you see the progression of the growth of the body of the child, right? Now, that's what I say. We are the witness of the changes of the body, is it not?
Yeah.
So, here it's saying the body is unchangeable. I mean, the soul is unchangeable. So there's a fundamental difference between the seer, who is not changing, it's always the same person, and the body, which is always changing. That's one major difference. And then it says, that the soul is inconceivable. Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I can't see the soul. I can see the effect of the souls being present in the body, that's consciousness. But the soul itself, I can't see it. It's too small. It's 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. How am I going to see it? So, inconceivably, it's inconceivably small. Most people think that the body is the same size as, the soul is the same size as the body. Huh? Would you agree with that?
No.
Well, that's because you've heard Bhagavad Gita. But if you never heard Bhagavad Gita, would you agree with it? Probably would. You'd say, yeah, what do you mean? This is my soul, this is my body, it's the same. Right? And this is why, like, Christians, Muslims, and Jews bury the body. Because they don't have a clear understanding of the difference between the body and the soul. Why do Hindus burn the body, and Christians, Jews, and Muslims bury the body in the cemetery with a big casket? The casket sometimes costs like $10,000. You know, they don't make them air conditioned, but they do. They do make them, airtight, so no insects or anything can get into it. And they want to protect. Why do they spend so much money to protect the body? Sometimes they'll build a mausoleum. There are rich people that build mausoleums. A mausoleum means a building that looks like a Greek temple, and they cost like $1 million or $2 million. Costs more than people's normal house, right? And if you go cities like New York, North Jersey, places where there are a lot of rich people who've died, you go into the cemeteries there, and you think, oh my God, they spend more money in the cemetery than they do outside. So why did they go through all that trouble to protect the body after it's dead? Because they believe that in the future, the coming of Jesus, the second coming of Jesus, He'll come and He'll raise everybody from the cemetery. They'll all come back up alive. And then there's a final judgment. So you need to have the body in order to be resurrected when Jesus comes back. So the Muslims, they believe they're the Mahdi or the Messiah, and the Jews believe the Messiah is going to come, right? And they're going to raise everyone up from the dead and make them whole again, and then make a judgment, whether they go to heaven or they go to some other place.
So Prabhuji, so like these people, like Indian people, they burn it so that if a place can be reused again and again. But the cemetery, like
Why did you say they burn it?
Not
that
that, I don't know like the real concept, but the place can be used to burn so many people, like whoever dies, they can burn there. So that same place can be used, right?
For what? For what?
To burn people.
What she's telling
is, I think what she's telling is that you use less space. I mean,
yeah, it can
You
be
mean not make cemeteries and waste space, is that what you're saying?
No.
cemetery like that, they put this,
Bro, in
thing,
Christianity, like, you're putting one person here, the other one here, so you
So
need
the
more
land is
space
kind of
as
lot of-
more people die, isn't it? And then you recycle one space. But in Hinduism, we don't need space. You just push it in one place,
Nature-friendly
burn
kind
it, and
of
you're done. You don't need spaces for that. So
That's called a non-answer, or a nonsensical reason. No, they burn the body so that the soul
doesn't come
does
back.
not remain attached to that body. Otherwise, the soul will not want to leave. They have to drag the soul away. The Yamadutas have to drag the soul away because the soul doesn't want to leave the body.
But it says the soul cannot be burnt, right? So the soul is not burning, but it's actually burning in the body.
Yeah, but if
Soul
there's
is
a
attached
body,
to the
the
body.
soul will try and linger in the body,
Okay.
even though it's dead.
Okay.
You see?
So once the body leaves, then only the body is dead. Right? So body leaves out, soul leaves out the body, then body is dead. So
Yeah, but
There's no
even
question.
after the body is dead, the soul sometimes is so attached to the body it doesn't want to leave.
Meaning it is out of body, but it wants to go back in. So there are
the whole
there are
concept is the
processes.
soul has to progress to its next how like the spiritual progression, it's like gradually it has to, so it has to get detached from this.
Like for example, so many Hindus were thrown out of Pakistan, right? Do they still talk about it?
No.
No? They don't talk
Oh,
about
the
it?
old people who were there, they talk.
Yeah, they're still attached. There's our, we had this, we had that, our house was this, our house was that, and my uncle owned so much land. It's still in their mind, you see? So that's what happens. The soul doesn't have a gross body, but the soul has a subtle body still. The subtle body is still enveloping the soul, and all those thoughts, I had this, I had that, they can't get it out of their mind. So when they burn the body, there's nothing to go back to and nothing to think about now. Yes.
I know we.
Say Hare Krishna.
Okay.
This is straight.
What did we say we're going to say
Hare
instead of
Krishna.
We're going to say, Hare Krishna, I think that, right?
Yeah.
You're going to say, Go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Very difficult to
Tradition.
Say, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
This is the new one. It's a Hare Krishna
It's very difficult to change.
Go ahead. Hare Krishna.
I know we I know we burn the body, but why do we do it? And then
Well, we just explained. So that the soul does not remain attached to the body, either subtly or grossly. To break that attachment.
okay.
Let us say you studied in your school for 5 years, in the same school, but when you go to college, you still remember your school, right? You find it in
Yeah.
mind. So whenever you pass by or whenever you go to college, you think about the school. Like that, the soul after leaving the body it still remembers the memories it has in that body, the experiences. It wants to come back. So that is the reason, in order, as Prabhu is saying, in order for the soul to progress, so this gross body should not be.
Now, if they don't destroy the body,
Yeah.
but they put the body in a nice air-conditioned, casket and they bury it, that's why people are afraid to go to cemeteries and stay there at night, because there could be ghosts there. You understand? So that's why they don't have, the Hindus don't have cemeteries, they just burn, they throw the ashes in the Ganges so that
Get
ashes become purified.
salvation. Better destination.
Yeah.
All is a gift.
Whereas the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews, they make these elaborate cemeteries, and they guard them, and it's like a crime if you in any way desecrate the graves of the dead, because they have to have the remains of the body to be resurrected at the second coming of Christ or the Messiah.
But usually after sometimes they recycle it, right? I don't know how many years, but isn't it like that?
They're not supposed to, but sometimes
Maybe
it
you have to
happens.
have money, then you will not be disturbed. Otherwise, they have 10 layers, so they keep recycling.
And some of these cemeteries, they
Yeah.
build these very strong carved rock temples. I mean, some of the cemeteries, especially on the East Coast and the West Coast, cemeteries, you won't believe the type of buildings they built. And then they bury the whole family, like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 generations in that huge building. And they have to pay for it. It's expensive. Yes.
What do the people do with the atheists' bodies? Because they're not Christian or Hindu or anything.
Good body.
It depends on which family they belong to.
Depends what the person wants. Some people will say, just burn my body and throw the ashes in the sewer. Other people say, different things, I mean, everybody has different ideas, right? I'm just explaining what is common practice amongst the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims as compared to the Hindus. Now the Parsis, they put the body out in the open, in a type of
Well,
structure,
Yeah.
so that the vultures come and eat the body.
That's how
It is still practiced in Bombay too, in
Yeah.
India. I don't know if they closed it now, but it was there.
Yeah.
ये उनका वही है ना. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
change it. Must be the same thing they follow.
What is the logic behind Prabhu? The vulture comes.
The body can be useful for somebody.
What is the logic behind? No. We'd have to ask a Parsi person. I don't know.
No, I'm just asking.
Or we can look it up on Wikipedia. Well, no. The Parsis, they follow an ancient religion, Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is a offshoot of Vedic Dharma. And as it went farther west, it changed and deteriorated in understanding. But it's related, very closely related to the Vedic Dharma. And they believe in the soul and the difference in the soul and the body. They definitely have, many Vedic concepts in that religion. Okay, so anyway,
With this clarification on Christians, Jews, Muslims, they don't believe that body has a soul, because I thought Christians don't believe in reincarnation, but they do
That's wrong.
believe that there is a soul.
no, they believe that there's a soul, but it's not quite clear. The soul is different than the body, right?
Same with Jews and Muslims. Also.
They believe that the soul needs a body, let's put it like that.
Oh,
And they probably, like some people say, they believe only humans have soul, animals don't have soul.
No, that's for sure.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
sure. Yeah, that's why they eat the animals. Okay, so let's read the purport. Who's going to read the purport without saying,
Okay.
Go ahead.
As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible.
Okay, that means that he's so small that we have no instrument to see it. That doesn't mean it can't be seen. It just means that we don't have an instrument powerful enough to see it. Go ahead.
As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception.
Okay, what does that mean? It is a fact by perception. Who wants to answer that question? You can't see it. You can't establish its existence simply. You can't. You just have to accept it as a truth. Although it is a fact by perception. What does that mean? Fact by perception. Daniel, have an idea?
There are symptoms of consciousness.
Yes.
In the living person, not in dead person.
Right. So you can see the difference between a living body and a dead body. So that means in the dead body there's something missing that's in the living body. And that is the consciousness. So the consciousness is accepted as quality of the soul. Right. So you can see the difference between a dead body and a living body. So that's what he means by perception. But can you measure it? Well, somebody measured it, that's why they're giving us the measure, but we can't see that measurement, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. We don't have a microscope strong enough to see it.
Even if they have, they won't be able to see it because it's spiritual, and you can't see with the material eyes.
That's probably true. also.
Because Krishna says, right, 11th chapter, he gives them divine eyes to see.
That was
The
his
material
universal form,
Yeah, even the,
which is
the-
bigger than everything.
Supposed to be material form.
And then in the 8th chapter, 9th verse,
Yeah,
he says that the soul, the spirit soul, the super soul is smaller than the soul.
yeah.
Even smaller than 1/10,000th of the tip of a hair. So how can you see? But yet, you can perceive it by its, let's say, qualities. Okay, go ahead. Keep reading.
There are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite Supreme Soul. The Supreme Soul is infinite, and the atomic soul is infinitesimal.
Infinitesimal.
Oh.
That means infinitely small, and the big soul is infinitely big, the super soul.
Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. So, repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error.
Yeah, so sometimes people say, oh, every week Hari Vilas gives the same lecture. Chant Hare Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, chant Hare Krishna. But repetition is necessary, what does it say here? In order that we understand the matter thoroughly. So, even though I've been saying in every lecture, every Sunday, chant Hare Krishna, there are people that come every Sunday that don't chant Hare Krishna. So what does that mean? It means that there's a disconnect, right? If every Sunday we say chant Hare Krishna, and every Sunday there's certain people that come to the temple that never chant Hare Krishna, then are they listening?
Not really.
Not really, no. Just like an elephant has much bigger ears than we do. Have you ever seen how big the ear is of an elephant? It's much bigger. Can he understand better because his ears are bigger? No. And let's see, I think medically they've proven that the elephant's brain is smaller than a human brain. We should find out on the internet. But so just because the ear is bigger doesn't mean it hears better than we do. But although it's true that the elephants can hear things that human beings can't hear. But we're speaking specifically about hearing and understanding the Vedas, or Bhagavad Gita. So just because the elephant's ear is much bigger than the human ear doesn't mean that the elephant can understand Bhagavad Gita bigger than human beings can. Okay, so many big major points are made in this one purport. And let's just go over it a little bit. Understanding something solely on the grounds of superior authority. This is a major theme in the Vedic understanding. So, how do we understand this? On the basis of superior authority. Well, can you think of anything else that you understand simply on the basis of superior authority, besides what we're reading now about the soul? Okay, let me give you an example. How far is the sun from the earth? You know, Arush? Have you studied that in school?
No.
No. Krishna too?
No.
I forgot.
I forgot.
You forgot. Oh, so you did study it, right?
Yeah.
The teacher will just say things like that from time to time, like the sun is this much away from the earth, and then she doesn't say it again.
You didn't read that in one of your science books?
No. I read it. But then I forgot it.
Okay, it's 93. How about,
I
you forgot also?
92 to
93 million miles, okay. Now, did you measure it?
No.
Will you ever measure it?
No.
So that's just something you have to accept. If you have a test and it says, how far is the sun from the moon, from the Earth planet? 93 miles, 93,000 miles, 930,000 miles, 30,000 miles, or 93 million miles. Which is the right answer? Right. But it's something that you'll never measure. You just have to accept it on the basis of authority. Right? And that's called science. You want to get an A in your science class, you have to answer 93 million. You see? So there are many things that we accept just on the basis of authority. It's not simply the soul. There are many, many things that we accept on the basis of authority without questioning it. Okay.
News.
Can you think of another example?
News.
A lot of news, yeah. A lot of things in the news we accept just on the basis of it. And in Sanskrit, can you think of anything else?
Weather report.
Huh?
Weather report.
Weather report, yeah. It's going to rain tomorrow. It rains every day.
The theories that we learn in science class, like different things.
Like what? Give me one example.
Oh, I know.
Yeah?
There is metaphor.
Big Bang.
The Big Bang Theory. Yeah. So, have you ever seen the Big Bang? Will you ever see it? You just have accepted it on authority.
Oh, and monkeys.
Darwin.
Monkeys.
Yeah, we all come from monkeys. That's another thing. Anything else?
Well, like different theories that scientists make up, but they're not maybe, like we can't figure them out on our own, but like different theories that.
Yeah, okay. All right, so like, atomic theory. Has anyone ever seen that picture of an atom with electrons around it, protons? Has anyone ever seen it? No, no one's ever seen it. It's a theory, right? I mean, you hear it so much that you think, well, yeah, someone must have seen it because they have so many nice pictures of it. I mean, drawings of it and diagrams, but no one's ever seen it. It's a theory, right? It's a theory that helps to understand certain things, but no one's absolutely sure that that's the real structure of the micro-universe. And then there you have the string theory, it's another theory. Then you have the wave theory, that's another theory. These are all theories. No one's ever actually seen these things. They've seen the effect of these things, and they theorize them based on either mathematics or whatever. But they're all theories. Yeah.
Another thing is the value of pi, that pi is infinite, that it keeps going up forever.
Well, that is a math, yeah.
Like we can't measure all the way to the end of.
Well, you can't measure infinity, yeah. But they can conceive of such a number, and that number is very useful to solving problems. Yeah. Okay, so then here, that's one big concept. Then, in other words, accepting knowledge given by an authority, right? So you're doing it every day. So why can't we do it by accepting the greatest authority, Krishna? Right? And he's explaining all about something we can't see, the soul, although we can perceive it by its presence, but we can't actually measure it. but we know it exists. Okay, then so also that it's impossible for us ever to become equal to Krishna. Our soul is infinitesimal. In other words, infinitely small, and Krishna's soul is infinitely great or big. So there's no way that we can become equal to Krishna by some meditation or yoga or any of those things. Why? Because the soul is unchangeable, so we're unchangeably small, and Krishna is unchangeably great. It's the nature of the soul. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Atachayanam nitya jatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nayanam sochitam adhasi. Ata, if, however, cha, also, enam, this soul, nitya jatam, always born, nityam, forever, va, either, manyate, manyase, you so think, mrityam, dead, tatapi, still, tvam, you, mahabaho, almighty armed one, na, never, enam, about the soul, sochitam, to lament, arhasi, deserve. If, however, you think that the soul, or the symptoms of life, is always born and dies forever, you still have no reason to lament, almighty armed. So this is Krishna's attempt to help Arjuna overcome his lamentation. Why? Because when a person is lamenting, it's almost impossible for them to understand anything. They're always crying and feeling sorry and feeling defeated and frustrated and feeling and grieving. You can't really explain anything to a person like that. So Krishna's trying to get Arjuna to sober up so that he can begin to understand these higher order principles of the existence of the soul. Because unless you understand the difference between the soul and the body, your spiritual life does not begin. You don't even take the first and probably the most important step toward understanding spiritual knowledge. So, who's going to read the purport? Yes, go ahead.
There's always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body.
Okay, so what does that mean in English? Akin to the Buddhists?
Similar.
Yes. Yeah. So the Buddhists also do not believe that the soul has a separate existence from the body. So that means most people believe the body and the soul coexist, they're the same.
When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they were known as the Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain nature condition of material combination.
So this is also the theory of Turing, father of modern computers. He said that at a certain point, the computers will become so advanced that they will be equal to human consciousness. So, in other words, some people believe that the life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. Go ahead.
The modern material scientists and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements.
So this is the way psychiatrists study the functioning of the brain. They map the brain this part of the brain is love. This part of the brain is anger. This part of the brain is this and that. They map out the brain, and they map out the genes, the genome list, and they map things out physically, and they believe that they can control things. But just like especially in the 1930s and 40s, when there was tremendous scientific advancements taking place, the doctors believed that they could control human beings by adjusting the physical brain. So there was a very wealthy family, was it the Rockefeller family? No, the Kennedy family. Kennedy family is very, very, very wealthy. By the way, the Kennedy family became wealthy during Prohibition period, when alcohol was not allowed. And Joseph Kennedy was a bootlegger. He illegally manufactured alcoholic beverages and sold them. So in other words, he was a gangster. That's how they made so much money, became so rich. And also he was a member of the International Nazi Party. He was a great admirer of Hitler. Of course, they don't teach that in school, but that's the truth. But he used all his money to help his sons succeed, and his money and his power to help his sons succeed. So anyway, he had a daughter who was slightly, today they would say probably she was autistic. But he believed in modern science and medical science. So the doctors convinced him if they could perform a surgery on her brain, that they had identified that part of her brain that controlled her ability to relate to other people, and that if they lobotomized it, in other words, cut it out, that she would be okay. And he believed it. And he paid. It was an expensive surgical process. And after they did that, instead of getting better, she got much worse, and much worse. And the rest of her life, she was like a vegetable.
She was like a what?
Like a vegetable. If you talk to a vegetable, does it talk back to you?
No.
No. So she became a vegetable. Ruined her life. And he completely, then he realized it was a huge mistake. At least she was functional before the doctors got to her. But after that, the rest of her life was dysfunctional. So, this is what you would call people who think that the life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. So if you understand the chemistry of the body, and then you can make it immortal. Like, for example, if you know all the chemicals in the body, then you can measure them after death and inject the chemicals that are missing, and theoretically the body should come back alive again. Is that true? No. But this is what people believe, and they're spending huge amounts of money. Just like cancer research. The cure for cancer has been known for 100 years. But they're still researching and collecting money for cancer research. Why is this? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cure for cancer is not that difficult to cure. It's caused by eating junk food and having junk habits. If you give those things up, you can cure most cancers, if not all of them. Right? But they use these other methods that, based on allopathic medicine. Allopathic medicine means You use one poison to kill another poison. But if you make a mistake in the level of poison, you can kill the person also. So, in Ayurvedic medicine, they don't use any poisons. They're not allowed to use poisons, right?
Those are also dangerous with their like heavy metals in their Ayurvedic medicines, which also
Well, that's
if the
because
doctor's not right and the
that's
medication.
because India is contaminated. Parts of India.
Lead or mercury.
Yes.
Becomes dangerous stuff.
Okay, so this idea now, I want, especially the kids, I want you to grasp this idea because you're going to encounter this over and over again in your studies. According to them, that is the material scientists and material philosophers, the body is a combination of physical elements. In other words, there's no soul in the body. And at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. So if the life symptoms develop at a certain stage of physical and chemical elements, then if you can analyze all the physical and chemical elements in the body, then you can stop it from dying, or you can bring it back to life after death. That's their theory. Like, for example, Prabhupada used the example of the egg. Scientists know everything about the egg. It's not complicated, is it? It's got a shell made mostly of calcium, and inside it's got some egg yolk and an egg white, right? So it's not a complicated thing. But they can't even make an egg. So how are they going to... I mean, they can't make an egg. Have they ever made artificial egg? No.
Chinese did.
Huh?
Chinese did.
They did?
They recreated everything without life.
It's not the actual thing.
Does it give birth to a chicken?
Nothing.
No, it's a
They're just
fake
trying.
egg, and it's
Yeah.
not
They're just
real.
trying own different ways.
No,
It's a fake
it's a
egg, so
fake
it's not
thing.
real.
Like just would look like, and you would
Oh,
eat
you
it.
mean
Oh,
like
this is
you mean
egg.
like plastic rice?
Yeah, exactly. Similar like.
It looks like rice. It cooks like rice,
Not it.
but it's not rice.
The point is that comparing to an egg, the human body is so complicated.
Yeah, but they can't even make an egg.
And then
But they know everything that's in the egg. I mean, what's in an egg anyway? It's not that complicated, right? But they can't even make an egg. Because their theory is this, that at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. Right? That sounds like scientific theory. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. You know what anthropology is? Anthro means human beings. Anthropology means the study of the history of human beings. Right? So anthropologists, they'll go dig up ancient cities and bones and things like that, and then they reconstruct what life was like in previous times from their digging and analyzing of things. Like, for example, and this is a good example, like maybe someone can answer this question. Why did the Egyptians build pyramids? And why did they have mummies in the pyramids?
I don't know.
To keep the body.
Then why did you raise your hand?
No, I think that
Okay, that means you think. Okay, good. Go ahead.
that they like how the Christians they bury the body.
Yeah.
It's like in the Egyptian times they used to like put the body in like pyramid or something, like kings and like wealthy people. They used to put and build pyramids and then put bodies in there and make like tombs inside underground and make like trap doors so nobody can like touch the body or anything.
Preserve the body, basically.
Yeah.
They believe that once the person died, in the afterlife they needed the body and their valuable items to enjoy their afterlife.
Yeah, so they have food and tables and chairs and beds and everything.
They don't take anything though.
Huh?
They don't take anything with them though.
Well, then why did they put those things in the...
Because I don't know.
So you see, that's another bodily concept of life. Right? And anyway, you see, now how big is a pyramid? Have you ever seen how big the pyramids are? They're huge. And I mean, if they tried to build those pyramids today, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. And there is a lot of mathematics and science and engineering involved in building a pyramid. If you go see how big the pyramid is, you'd be shocked. You know, and how did they do it? This is like 3,500 years ago, 3,000 years ago, they built these pyramids. And then the inside of the pyramid is very complicated. And then they have mummies. They had the science how to preserve a body after death. Some of those mummies are over 3,000 years old, and they're very well preserved. Right? And then they made these like caskets for the mummies. You know, there's gold and lapis lazuli and all these precious metals and jewelry and things like that. It costs a lot of money. All for the body.
And how did they build in the lifetime of the king itself such huge structure?
Yeah.
I reckon it would take so much so much time.
It's incredible how they did it.
Yeah.
There's so much mathematics involved, and science, architecture, and engineering. And the structure of the pyramids are very precise, based on the golden ratio. It's a mathematical number that is present all throughout the universe. Okay, so here we see all this is based on the bodily concept of life. Currently, many pseudo-religions now becoming fashionable in America are also adhering to this philosophy, as well as to the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. What does the word nihilistic mean? Nihilistic.
Nothing matters.
Huh?
Like nothing matters ultimately. I think the philosophy.
Yeah, that everything ends up zero. Let's look up the word nihilistic. Nihilism. Nihilism or istic, nihilistic. Everything ends up zero. Nihilism means non-existent or...
Rejecting all religious and moral principles and belief.
What?
Rejecting all religious and moral principles and the belief that life is meaningless.
Okay.
Like skepticism and negativity.
Skepticism, yeah. Yeah, so that currently many pseudo-religions, what does pseudo mean?
Not bona fide.
False, yes. Many pseudo-religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adhering to this philosophy as well as to the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. So in other words, everything is just a combination of physical elements. There's no such thing as the soul. And consciousness also is just a combination of physical elements. Okay, so, yes, you're going to continue reading now. Even if Arjuna
did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, that would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty armed, because he at least did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles.
Behoove means that it was necessary for him to follow the Vedic principles. So Arjuna is not one of these modern scientists or anthropologists. He believes in the existence of the soul. But there's no reason to lament because the soul is eternal. It can never be killed. Or if he was like these atheists that don't believe in the existence of the soul, they just believe in matter and physical combination, and chemicals, then who cares if a bunch of chemicals disappear? There's no reason to lament for it. So both ways there's no reason to lament. It's only if the soul is something living and then it dies forever. Then there might be a reason to lament. Right? But it doesn't die forever. So if you remember 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, I was talking about the Pope made an announcement. When the Pope said that the soul, there's no hell, and that some souls just die and they disappear. Well, in the last couple of weeks, the Pope didn't come out and say, I didn't say that. But other members around the Pope said that he didn't say that. He didn't mean that. And then they said that the Pope was having an interview with a friend of his, Mr. Scalfari, I think that's his name, or Scalfaliani or something like that, who is the owner of the biggest newspaper in Italy. And he's 93 years old, and he's a friend of the Pope's, but he himself is an atheist. But the Pope likes him. So every once in a while, the Pope invites him to come and talk to him in private, where there's nobody else around. So in one of those private conversations where there was no tape recorder and no notes being taken, and it was just this man, atheist, and the Pope, afterwards this man came out, and he's the owner of the biggest newspaper in Italy. And he said, the Pope told me these two things, that there is no hell and some souls die and then stop existing. So, who knows what actually went on between those two? What was actually said? Nobody can say for sure. And the Pope himself did not come out and say, I didn't say that. It's the people around him that said it. You know, the other people who were not in the room when that conversation was taking place. So we'll never really know if he said it or he didn't say it. And anyway, what the church said was, this was not an official statement of the Pope. It was an informal conversation. And you cannot, take it as an official statement.
Still, it's not good, right?
Huh?
Still, if you said that, it's not good for him.
Pope is not surrendered.
Huh?
Pope is not surrendered.
Yeah, I mean, now the only way we're going to know what he really said is if, like, 6 months or 1 year from now, he's no longer the Pope. Right? He resigns like the previous Pope did. Or if he dies, or if he's assassinated, or something like that, then you know he actually did say that. Or if he comes out and purposely says, I never said that. It was totally a fabrication of my good friend, the atheist, Mr. Scalfari, or whatever his name is. But if he doesn't do that, and he just, in the future dies without ever, refuting that statement, then you know that he probably did say that. Or the third thing is, he can come out and be very combative and say, I did say that, and I hold to that point, to that statement, right? So it's going to be interesting, and I tell you, it will be resolved in 1 year, whether he said it or not, in one way or the other.
One
Okay.
thing is sure, like he's now no longer friends with that guy.
No, he's insisting that he's friends with that guy. He likes that guy. He likes the discussions
No,
with that guy.
after this incident, probably he won't be calling him friend because if
Who knows?
he wouldn't expect him to do something there.
See, one thing about the present Pope, he is supposed to be a very honest guy, honest person. And he has different opinions than traditional popes have. So we'll see. I mean, he might have such a sense of integrity that he'll say, well, look, those other people are saying I didn't say it, but I did say it. Or he might threaten to say it in public, and then they'll get rid of him. We don't know. You only know as time goes on what the truth is. Okay.
It's not a good situation for them if he said that.
Huh?
It's not good thing for the Christians if the Pope is saying like that.
No, if he'd said that, he's going against the teaching of the Catholic Church for the last 2,000 years. Yeah. It's a big thing, actually. Yeah. Okay. So, we can see that even in ancient times, there were people who believed that the soul doesn't exist, that we're just a body. It's not some modern concept. It's been there from the time 5,000 years ago. Okay. Why are we spending so much time on this? Because again, unless we understand the difference in the body and the soul, we don't really begin our spiritual life. For the scientists have taken the side of there is no spiritual soul. It's all happens by material combination and chemicals and physics or whatever. So, and this is what they're teaching in school. And this is what many modern theories are based on, or modern educational disciplines are based on, such as anthropology and history and so many things. So this is a major point, yes?
So Prabhuji, I just heard a lecture today about chanting, and it said Keshavananda Prabhu's, and he was saying you should always remember, while chanting you should remember that you are the soul and not the body. I mean that's one of the points.
Yeah.
To remember during the chanting. So is it, I understand initially theoretically we need to remember, but then at what point can I say that I understood I'm the soul? I mean when will I understood or what do I do to make sure I understand?
No, you understand when you become determined to serve Krishna your whole life. That's when you understand. Like for example, let's say you go to the beach and you spend all day making a sand castle, and it's really a wonderful work of art. And the next morning you go and you see that the high tide came in and completely leveled the sand castle that you worked on like 8 hours. And it's all flat, as if nothing was there before. So, was it worth it, making all that effort? Huh? No, because there's nothing to show for it. It was wiped out in one night, right? So, everything we do for the body, is there ever going to be anything that remains in the future? All the makeup, all the massages, all the creams, all the diets, all this, all that. Is there anything to show for it in the end? All the plastic surgery. Yeah, the false teeth, they'll still be there in the grave. They'll all be there, and it'll be just as bright as when you first got them. But you won't be there. You see my point, that unless we pay attention to the soul and understand the difference between the soul and the body, we'll just do all these things, cosmetic things for the body, and there's nothing to show for it in the end. It's just a waste of time. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore the body, but we shouldn't be overly attached to the bodily concept of life. We should just maintain it as a useful tool for self-realization. Just like you have a screwdriver, it's a useful tool for making things. You have a pair of pliers, it's a useful tool for making things. But the purpose of life is not the pliers or the screwdriver. It's simply a tool to do something, and the body is given to us as a tool for self-realization. But the reason self-realization is all about the relationship of our soul with Krishna. It's not about preserving the body. So everyone else is trying to preserve the body. Just like one person, there was this famous comedian, Joan Winters, and she's had plastic surgery. She was in her 80s, but she looked like a girl that's maybe 30 years old. She had so much plastic surgery. Another one is Michael Jordan. He had plastic surgery so many times, right? And some of it was failing.
Michael Jackson?
Huh?
Michael Jackson.
Yes.
The singer died.
Yeah. He eventually died, young. Right? So, he changed the body so much. He was black, but he made himself white. And then, he looked like an African, so he made himself look like, a Caucasian. And he had a lot of plastic surgery. And then eventually he died because of his lifestyle. Right? So, you can't preserve the body. It's going to get old, eventually it's going to die. Right? But you can use the body for Krishna's service. And therefore, your soul can be liberated eternally from the cycle of birth and death. So therefore, we have to decide what we're going to work for in our life. What is our actual purpose? What is the purpose of life? Why are we here on this earth? What's the purpose of material creation? All these things are given to us so that we can solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease, and go back to the spiritual world, where we belong, in an eternal spiritual body. Now, the material point of view is so powerful that it convinces us that that's all fairy tales. There's only matter, there's only chemicals, and you can manipulate them, and maybe one day you can even become immortal by manipulating them in different ways. So they're trying to make something that's mortal, immortal. Is that possible? No. But the soul is already immortal. But they're ignoring the existence of soul and trying to make the body immortal, the material body. You see how foolish society has become. If you read newspapers about what scientists are trying to do today, you'll see they're trying to make the material body immortal. It's not possible. It's a waste of time. They're trying to go to the moon. It's another waste of time. They'll never be able to go to the moon or to Mars. Right? But yet they're spending billions and millions of dollars. They're trying to find a cure for cancer. Well, the cure for cancer is give up junk food. Give up irresponsible lifestyles. Become regulated. You won't get cancer. You see? So it's just like the vacuum cleaner salesman. He's going door to door with a vacuum cleaner to demonstrate it. So when he knocks on your door, you open the door, you say yes, and right away he throws a bag of dirt on your rug. He said, "Don't worry, I'll clean it up." And he barges his way in, plugs his vacuum cleaner in, and shows you how good his vacuum cleaner cleaned up the dirt. Now, first of all, you didn't need that dirt on your rug, right? You had a clean rug before you opened the door, and then he threw the bag of dirt on your rug, and he barged in and said, "Don't worry, I'll clean it up." And he said, "Look how good this vacuum cleaner is." So in the end, you end up buying a vacuum cleaner that you don't really need. Right? So this is what they do. They create a problem that's insoluble, and they they collect money to research how to solve it. So how many years have they been collecting money to cure cancer? Tell me. Since the 1940s, 1930s, they've been collecting money. And previously they had the March of Dimes. In 1950, they would send you this thing in the mail, and it had these little slits, and you were supposed to collect all your dimes and put it, and then mail it back. It's for cancer research. Right? They've been doing all these different tricks collecting money for cancer. Has cancer gone down? No, it's gone up. And it hasn't disappeared, it's gotten worse. Now, it's just like, have the casinos gone bankrupt? No, they've gotten bigger. What does that mean? I mean, more people are losing money. But the casinos advertise that you'll win money if you come to the casino. You see? In the same way, they've collected all this money for cancer research. Has cancer gone away? No, it's gotten worse. You see? So in the same way, they're thinking that the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. This is their theory. This theory has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it's a junk theory. It's not true. You see, it was even present in the time of Arjuna 5,000 years ago, and Krishna. You see? And the theory is still here. They still haven't junked that theory. And they're spending billions and billions of dollars based on that theory. So, how do we free ourselves from these misconceptions? You have to read Bhagavad Gita, but even reading Bhagavad Gita, you will not understand it. You have to chant and engage in practical service. Then the understanding will come. Without practical service, under the guidance of bona fide teachers, it will never be able to seize the idea of the soul and the relationship with Krishna. Okay, so what did he say in his lecture?
Chanting, yeah. So while chanting,
You remember
what should be your feelings and what should be your thoughts? So I think in the section of feelings, he said you should be prayerful mood and the grateful mood, and your thoughts should be that you are the soul and not the body, and Krishna is always with you. So those are the four things.
Okay, so that's in stark difference to this theory, that the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage of life the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. So which theory are you going to accept? You see? But this is how stark the difference is between these 2 points of view. This is how dramatic the difference is between these 2 points of view. The whole culture in the West is based on this physical theory of life. The whole culture, the whole educational system is based on this theory. Right? Do they teach you the difference between the soul and the body in school? No.
They've gone away from the Vedic culture, that's why they don't know.
Huh?
Because they've gone away from the Vedic culture, that's
Yeah.
why they don't know.
Yeah.
But Prabhu, even probably if we wouldn't have come here and learnt from you, we also wouldn't have known about the body. Though our parents told us, we kind of never kind of learnt it the way it should be learned. I think probably after coming to classes and kind of, giving it more importance. I mean, though living in India, probably we also never kind of really thought. Though my father would always tell us,
What would he tell you? What would he tell you?
My father would always read the Bhagavad Gita, and he would attend Bhagavad Gita classes.
But what did he tell you, though?
He always told us that you're not the mind and you're not the body and you're the soul. I kind of never understood, and probably my father was not a very strict teacher. He would just tell us and I'm like, okay, and we would never bother to listen. But now I know what he tried to tell us.
What he tried to tell you.
And he kind of lived also that way in the sense, you know, a very frugal life, and he would never indulge in, you know, he would literally fall in love with Bhagavad Gita, that kind of thing.
You see, we see